Good afternoon, members of the Committee of General Affairs, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this continuation of Committee of General Affairs meeting number 2 for today, Thursday, March 13, 2025. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Mercelina, and his respective supportive staff. We have established a quorum of 5 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received a notice of absence from the following committee members: MP Roseburg and MP York. Are there any notifications? I see no need. The agenda point for this committee meeting is report auditing public sector travel and Parlatino membership, IS 324, 2023, dated January 9, 2024. It is good to note that today's meeting is a continuation of the committee meeting, which was adjourned on November 20th, 2024, and on February 5th, 2025, during which agenda point 2 of this meeting was handled and closed. During the meeting of November 20th, 2024, this agenda point was adjourned to allow preparations by the Council of Ministers on this agenda point. At the continuation of this meeting on February 5th, 2025, the agenda point remained adjourned until further notice to allow the Council of Ministers additional time to prepare for the agenda point. We go over to agenda point 1. On January 8, 2024, the General Audit Chamber issued a report titled Auditing Public Sector Travel and Parlatino Membership. This document is registered on the IS 324, 2023-2024. In this report, the Chamber examines travel regulations and expenses within the public sector of St. Martin and assess the efficiency, effectiveness, and compliance of travel-related activities to ensure the responsible and transparent use of public funds. The aim of their audit was to identify areas for improvement in travel planning, decision-making, expense management, and reporting. The Chamber believes that this will enable the public sector to enhance cost effectiveness, streamline procedures, and strengthen governance over travel activity. In addition, the Chamber also evaluated the effectiveness of Parliament's membership in Parlatino, an intergovernmental organization. It is important to note that this evaluation/audit was based on a decision of Parliament in August 2022. In the report, the Audit Chamber recommends amending the current regulations and travel policy to require reports justifying in-person travel, and also that accountability for per diem expenditures, including the return of unused public funds, should be enforced. The Audit Chamber, in their report, suggests that Parliament, government, and related entities are strongly encouraged to carefully review the report and adopt the recommendations to foster responsible financial practices. The General Audit Chamber issued the following recommendations for Parliament, ministers, and the civil service to increase efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. 1. Draft a national decree containing general measures concerning the allowance for accommodation expenses and travel insurance for civil servants, as is required by Article 72 of the National Ordinance, Substantive Civil Servants Law. 2. Ensure that each trip aligns with an overall plan or project and assess the availability of statistics or measurable outcomes before committing public funds to business travel. 3. Require exploring alternative options than in-person travel to contribute to increased efficiency and cost effectiveness. 4, make economy class travel to standard, except for justifiable cases and based on amended legislation and policy, with business class as the highest class. 5, split the term per diem into travel and lodging and meals and incidentals. 6, use internationally recognized standards to calculate the lodging rate and incidentals per country, or in some cases, per city. 7, require accountability of the per diem. 8, require that any amount left unspent is returned. 9, require pre- and post-travel reporting for ministers and members of parliament, similar to civil servants, to promote transparency, accountability, and effectiveness. For example, what is the goal of the intended travel? Consider options that are most efficient. How to give account for the amount spent. What are the outcomes of the travel, etc. 10, centralize the booking of flights and accommodations to reduce costs. 11, clarify justification for per diem increase based on ministers' presence and explain if the travel policy for civil servants remain applicable. 12, avoid sponsorship-based travel to prevent conflicts of interest and potential institutional bias. 13, consider discontinuing participation in Parlatino and explore other, for example, regional and more cost-efficient options. This report was handled in a faction leaders meeting on July 3rd, 2024, and it was decided that Parliament will look into the recommendation by the Audit Chamber, but that the Minister of General Affairs should be called to a committee meeting first to discuss public sector travel in general and to hear from the government on their response to this report by the Audit Chamber and if government intends to make any changes. I would like to now give the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luc Marcelino, for his opening remarks.
President of Parliament, Secretary General, members of Parliament, support staff, and the people in St. Martin in general, good day. As you said, President of Parliament, this meeting, as you know, is a continuation of a meeting from actually January 2024 on actually a report that was made by the General Audit Chamber concerning auditing public sector and Parlatino membership on the topic of traveling. I would like to give a little overview about the presentation that I'm going to give today. First of all, I will keep a small introduction. Afterward, I will go into the key audit findings. I will go with you all through the process, the current process policy actually for travel for specifically civil servants. Then I will do the same with current process and policy for traveling of ministers. I will go through the recommendation report auditing public sector travel and Parlatino membership. And as last, I will go through what is actually under review based on the recommendations of the General Audit Chamber. First of all, the report auditing public sector travel and Parlatino membership is actually published in January 2024. It is good for us to realize that actually they have used calendar year 2023 to make this report that was actually published in 2024. And actually, it's actually giving an overview of the traveling matters of 2022. So the base of the conclusion of this report are based on the happenings, events that took place in 2022 as the agenda, actually as the calendar period that this investigation took place. The purpose of this report done by the Audit Chamber, the General Audit Chambers, was actually to assess government travel expenses in general and also Parlatino travel and Parlatino membership costs. The second purpose was to focus actually on compliance, cost effectiveness of traveling, integrity and accountability. And the third purpose of this report was actually aiming to recommendations to optimize the spending and actually prevent conflicts of interest and to improve transparency concerning a business travel for the public sector. As the President of Parliament went fast through the findings of the General Audit Chamber concerning this matter, the first one was that government travel expenses, and the reason why they did this, actually this report was that there was some expenses that doubled in 2022 concerning the budgeted amount that was allocated and what has been spent in 2022 for traveling. The second one was that the ministers and the members of parliament received approximately 720 guilders per diem per day, but lacked accountability in reporting back about the usage of this amount. The third reason to do this auditing was actually the travel justification and expense documentation were often missed. The fourth reason was actually Parlatino membership costs 2.14 million since 2010, so from the period of 2010 till 2022, in total of 2 million has been spent on the Parlatino matter. The fifth reason why the Audit Chamber did that was because, of course, there's always an integrity risk that has to be identified in third parties that especially are involved in the funding arrangements for actually public sector and in general for civil servants and for the ministers, and of course also for the members of parliament. To be more exact, the figures that they were looking at in 2022 was the budgeted amount of government in 2022 for traveling, for civil servants, and for the ministers was an amount of 600,000 Antillean guilders. This was for the part of government, not for parliament. And actually the actual expenditures in 2022 was a total amount of 1.23 million. Actually, for parliament also there is a budget, and the report mentions that the amount that was actually used in 2022 for traveling for parliament was 395,000 Antillean guilders. And as I said already, the Parlatino membership and travel since 2010 until 2022, inclusive the year that they did the research, was in total 2.14 million. Actually, once a civil servant or a minister has to travel, this advice that has to be made up needs the approval of the manager of the department to start with. Actually, the second station that this passes is an approval of the financial controller. The third one is the Secretary General. And the last one that approves with the signature this advice is the minister from that specific ministry. Important is for us to be critical that the itinerary and the airfare has to be mentioned in that advice. The daily allowance per diem has also be advised in the advice that is set up, and also the travel insurance necessary for traveling of a civil servant and a minister. Further, it is important that after fulfilling this mission, that the civil servant and/or the minister returns a report, in this case for ministers, I will come back on that, to the Council of Ministers and the Secretariat of the Council of Ministers. And also for the civil servants, it's important to come back with the declarations to verify the expenses that has been made during the travel. On the side of the ministers, it's actually almost the same. If there is a travel plan for the minister, the Council of Ministers in this case has to approve the proposal for the traveling of a minister. Actually, it goes via a pre-approval in the COM. The minister announces his intention to. A discussion can follow at the moment that he presents his intention to travel. On the basis of that, he gets to start with a approval. Then he gives the order for a advice to be made. And then in the advice again, the itinerary and the airfare has to be mentioned, the daily allowance for the travel, and also, of course, just by the civil servants, the travel insurance. And when the minister comes back from his travel mission, it's also important for the minister to make a report of his travel mission. And in this case, it's going to be discussed in the Council of Ministers, and it's going to be handed over to the Secretariat of the Council of Ministers. The Audit Chamber gave, after analyzing the whole expenditures behavior for traveling...
Sorry, Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt to see if it's possible, if you can send us the presentation as well.
Of
please.
course.
Thank you.
The presentations will be sent today, for sure. The General Audit Chamber also gave, on the base of their research and auditing, they gave some recommendations. And the first one is that they recommend, instead of following a policy, to see if we could transfer the policy in a draft national decree containing general measures concerning the allowance for accommodation expenses and travel insurance for civil servants, as is required by Article 72 of the National Ordinance Substantive Civil Servants Law, being the LMA. So actually, for us to transform the policy, travel policy, into a landsbesluit houdende algemene maatregelen, the well-known LBHAM. A second recommendation of the Audit Chamber is to ensure that each trip aligns with an overall plan or project and assess the availability of measurable outcomes before committing public funds to business travel. So actually, to measure the return on investment, to stay critical on the expenses behavior of government, to really make sure that we will get a return on the investment for this travel mission. A third recommendation of the Chamber is to require exploring alternative options than in-person travel to contribute to increased efficiency and cost effectiveness. In this case, the priority of government is to actually promote online meetings instead of traveling, which is at this particular moment already ongoing. However, at times, as human life works, it's, I think, sometimes important that the person is physically present where a meeting takes place, actually sometimes for others sitting on a table, other stakeholders to feel the emotions, the tension, etc., and the severity of the topic that is being discussed for you to get the optimal result out of that meeting. The fourth proposal, recommendation of the General Audit Chamber is to make economy class travel the standard. And except for justifiable cases and based on amended legislation and policy, in principle, we are going with this one that the guidelines that we adhere to is actually to give priority to economy class. And if necessary, it's on business class. There is already a policy for ministers in case they travel more than 3 hours. There is the possibility that they can make use of business class. Recommendation number 5 is to split the term of per diem into travel and lodging and meals and incidentals. This case already for the public sector, for civil servant, this is done, that there is actually a splitting of the travel and lodging and the meals. Normally, a civil servant gets 300 guilders per day, in which 200 is for the lodging, for the hotel costs, and the meals and incidentals is the other 100 guilders to make it 300. A fifth recommendation, no, we are ready by the sixth recommendation of the General Audit Chamber is use internationally recognized standards to calculate the lodging rate and incidentals per country. This is actually very difficult to give a follow-up to, considering the international fluctuation in prices is a big difference if you go to Texas or if you go to New York, for example. The prices of hotels in New York are approximately most of the time average above the $500 per night. So it's very difficult to attach to the internationally recognized standards because there is an enormous fluctuation per destination that you choose to go. Recommendation number 7 of this audit report says to require accountability of the per diem that is being given. Currently, this is already in our policy, so it's a recommendation, but actually we have already the policy that states that accountability has to be given to the per diem that is being granted for you to realize this mission as a civil servant. Actually, we divide it in lodging, as we say, and also the daily expenditures for food and for moments that you have an unexpected expense to do. The 8th recommendation of the General Audit Chamber is to require that any amount left unspent is returned. And this is at this particular moment also a discussion. You can imagine after you're paying your lodge of 100, you have to still pay a taxi, you have to eat through the day for the 100. I think it's going to be the amount of administration and personnel that you need to do that administration for the rest of that 20 guilders of that day. I do not think that that is going to have a significant contribution to saving money for government. So this is a point of discussion at this particular moment. The recommendation number 9, that is require a pre- and post-travel reporting for ministers and members of parliament, similar to civil servants, to promote transparency, accountability, and effectiveness that are most efficient, how to give accounts for the accounts spent. And actually, this is also, as a recommendation, point 9, already in place in our policy, and civil servants are already giving follow-up to this recommendation. Recommendation number 10 from the General Audit Chamber is to avoid sponsorship-based travel to prevent conflicts of interest and potential institutional bias. I can imagine that that statement is being made, but it's important also for you to realize that there are institutions that we are members of, for example, the CRIF, that is actually the group that is actually insuring a lot of countries for nature disasters. We pay a yearly fee. And for example, recently they had a conference in Trinidad, and part of it, the invitation is that the CRIF itself paid for St. Martin to be represented in the latest development concerning vision on calamities, nature calamities, etc. So it's depending on the topic, depending on the organization that is inviting. But I can imagine, of course, that if you get as a civil servant an invitation from a third party, it's very important on the base of our watch of integrity to evaluate if it's correct what is being done and if it's acceptable for your trip to be paid for you to be present at that conference, for example. So it stays, concerning agenda point number 10, it stays a little case dependent, and we have to realize that some of these meetings are already paid for through the membership. 11, that is another recommendation of the General Audit Chamber, and the General Audit Chamber recommends to consider discontinuing participation in Parlatino and explore other regional or more cost-efficient options. I think that that is to the discretion of Parliament to see what they are going to do with that recommendation number 11 of the General Audit Chamber. Recommendation number 12, that is also coming from the General Audit Chamber, that is actually to centralize the booking of flights and accommodation to reduce costs. And this is something that we are looking in now to see how we can centralize the booking of flights and accommodation for several reasons. I will come back to that. And agenda point number 13, that is the last recommendation of the General Audit Chamber, is to clarify justification for per diem increase based on minister presence and explain the travel policy for civil servants at the end of the day. I think by updating the legislation, this is also something that can be accommodated in the legislation as is proposed also by the General Audit Chamber. What do we think as government that is important for us to take under review? As I went through the 13 recommendation points of the General Audit Chamber, I gave already some feedback which one we are doing already, which ones are under discussion, but we still have to stay critical and do some auto-reflection. And we thought that under the review it's important for us to evaluate, to have a travel agenda. And why that? If we have every year a Vierlanden overleg, for example, we know that already as of the beginning of the new calendar year that we have that. And we can even actually filter it down to a quarterly amendments if necessary. But if you know far in advance already that you're going to travel in a month in the year, if you book at that particular moment, it's going to be very cost effective compared to if you book 2-3 days before leaving for that event. So in the way of agendizing actually the travel, it's going to be much easier for us to plan in advance, far in advance already, the tickets and also the accommodation abroad. And I think that is going to help enormously in the savings. What is also something that we're working on, and actually we just developed that, is a travel pre-approval. If you take the time necessary to get the approval for a civil servant, to get the green light to assist, to attend a meeting abroad, if you have to go through the separate posts before everybody put their signature, you can lose some efficient time. And if there is already a pre-green light for that mission, in the meantime, already you can start with the booking of the accommodation and travel, waiting for the protocol to be accommodated to finalize the procedure correctly. A third topic that we are looking into it is the online booking that we think can make a difference. If we can book on time and online, it's going to, of course, contribute to being more effective and economical for the organization. And also what we can work to, for example, if we see that we have regular visits in Curaçao, for example, or in Aruba, or in the Netherlands, that we can start negotiating for a fixed rate by hotels that every year again are going to be used anyway, that we can sit and negotiate a fixed rate agreement with them. And also focus, for example, as last on the flyer miles and accommodation credits that are sometimes beneficial to make use of by traveling. I think that that has been a little the presentation that I would like to give concerning the traveling by public servants and also by ministers. And of course, if there are any questions, feel free to come with those questions. Thank you, President of Parliament.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So now I'll look at the floor to see if there's any member of Parliament who wish to have the floor. I see MP Westcott. MP Westcott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon to you, to my colleagues, our support staff, and of course to the Prime Minister and his support staff here present. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your update as requested by Parliament on the report as issued by the General Audit Chamber. Mr. Chairman, through you, the Prime Minister hinted to amended legislation. I assume that's the legislation regarding travel that applies to ministers and members of Parliament. And so my question is, when can we expect the proposals to amend this legislation? Secondly, the issue of the Prime Minister in his presentation referred to policy and processes or procedures, and the fact that the recommendation is that some of these matters be put into national decrees. The policy for the civil servants, and is all of it written, one, and is it the same for the ministers? So are there written policies for civil servants with some of the matters as mentioned there? And is it the same for the ministers? And if these are both written policies, if they can be shared with Parliament, as a note here, Parliament too has its so-called travel guidelines. Hence, my reason for asking for them so that a comparison could be made. Because as I mentioned earlier, the legislation, so the national ordinance regulating travel of ministers and members of Parliament is actually the same. So if those can be shared, and I think a note needs to be made here in terms of referring to the issue of Parlatino, and this is more sort of a heads up because this particular communication from Parlatino that I'm referring to is for debate, or will be for debate in our Parlatino committee, where actually the way that we have been sending representatives to participate in committee meetings of Parlatino, we received correspondence from Parlatino that actually prefers to have only 2 members per committee, one, and that these be actually in place for as long as a term. So, but that's just a heads up for us as Parliament discussing Parlatino and the benefits and otherwise, and participation. In addition to that, Parliament, based on discussions that we have been having, I think even before this report was issued, had already started to look for comparative parliamentary participation next to, or maybe eventually to replace Parlatino. And as a note, we have been somewhat successful in doing so, and hence our participation in Parliamericas, which from all indications from members who have participated is a better fit, if I can use that that word. But so, Mr. Chairman, yeah, to the Prime Minister, are legislative changes anticipated, and if so, when will these proposals for change reach to Parliament? The policies currently, and then I gave a note for Parlatino meetings in particular. I thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Seeing that this is a committee meeting, I would like to extend the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister to see if he can answer one time, so we can have somewhat of a dialogue, or if you need some more time, then we'll go over to the next members.
If it's possible, President, if we can go through all the members that still have questions, and then I will accumulate them all and then give an answer how we will move on with giving answers to the questions, if it's possible.
No problem. That's fine with me. Prime Minister, does anyone else, any other member of Parliament wish to have the floor? I see MP Omar Artley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister for your presentation. Good day to you and your support staff, the viewing and listening public. As I listen to the information presented by the Audit Chamber, I do understand the reasoning for government trying to save money, and there are a lot of good ideas within the report. However, some of them seem a bit far-fetched, and I like the fact that the Prime Minister was honest in the presentation, where stating certain aspects he don't think will work. Because it's one thing looking at stuff on paper, and it's another thing having the experience and traveling and understanding that some countries where we do go, the per diem isn't enough. I can speak for first-hand experience. So you not only have the per diem, you have to have your savings to go as well. So I don't want it to be seen to the public as if the per diem is just this whirl of money that you receive, and then by them saying you have to report or bring back what you don't use, is basically forcing the member of Parliament, the member of the ministry, or the civil servant to basically try to spend. You know? So either way, you're going to find yourself in a bind. I think we need a holistic approach. And yes, cuts and adjustments needs to be made. Also, as someone who attended both Parlatino and Parlamerica, while Parlamerica gave me a broader scope, I would not say that I learned more from Parlamerica than Parlatino. Parlamerica was more interactive. Parlatino was more, I would say, interactive, where I received more perspective on different things. So it's a difference. One is like interaction, where I spoke more and participated, that is the correct word. And with the Parlatino was more information driven, whereby then we can apply certain things here. To this date, we are still, if I stand to be corrected, we're still waiting for the final report for Parlamericas as well. So I'm waiting on that so we can present to the rest members of Parliament who have never experienced Parlamericas, so they for themselves can see and make a judgment call on whether which is more effective. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. I see we have MP Duran as the next speaker. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues, the Prime Minister's support staff, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. I have a few points. While reading and also listening to the Prime Minister based on the report, I must say that I do see some points of improvement, because at the end of the day, we are ever evolving as a country. So of course we need to make certain adjustments. I do know, and even listening to the Prime Minister when he mentioned that sometimes you need a pre-approval as a minister because the administration takes so long and sometimes things get more expensive. I can already foresee it being a sort of an administrative nightmare when you take the per diem and cut it up in different stages and then try to get back receipts and then pay back. And I'm trying to understand, how does the government see this as a possibility? So some more information on that through you, Mr. Chairman, because I believe the 400 came from somewhere. If some kind of data can be given as to where it came from, based on what, based on the calculations, because indeed, as you rightfully mentioned, Prime Minister, places like Washington, New York, Aruba, the hotel rooms are way more expensive than anywhere else. So I would like to know if maybe some data can be provided as to where we are and how did we get there in terms of the particular number that is there for ministers and, in this case, parliamentarians. I would also like to know, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Prime Minister, has research been done in terms of our kingdom partners? So every one that consists or that make up this kingdom, how their travel policy is. Do they travel economy? And if that is not the case, based on what, if you know, then this report was drafted saying that it should be changed to economy. So I just want some clarity as to if there's some sort of background story as to where that came about, or is it just solely about cutting costs? I would like to know through you, Mr. Chairman, what is the government's view on paid travel? Because I know some sponsorship, that discussion took place where CRIF was paying for certain ministers because we're a member of that, which is, in my opinion, totally understandable. But what are your views, Prime Minister, when it comes to government-owned companies or semi-government entities? For instance, the port paying for the Minister of TIA to attend FCCA, for instance, or Cadastre, SZV paying for the Minister of Health to go on a health summit or discuss something in the Vierlande Overleg in terms of health. How do you see that if SZV were to pay for a minister? I know that there has been different discussions on this point. At the end of the day, I respect everyone's opinion. Some pro, some no. I am definitely in favor of it because I don't see the issue with it, especially if this entity, in this case, let's say SZV, requires or invites the minister. It wasn't on the minister's initiative to attend such a conference. How does the government view that? And I believe it was, I think, in 2021 or 2022, we already started with paying things via the credit card and try to limit the travel agency interaction to cut costs significantly. And I believe some data exists with regards to the savings and the difference in prices, whereas, let's say as a minister, the limit will be increased for you to purchase the tickets for yourself and the staff that may accompany you, and that would be done directly from the internet, then it would cut out the whole travel agency fee. So I would just like some clarity on some data, if that can be provided. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Duran. I see the next person to speak is MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Rifir, Prime Minister and your support staff, my fellow colleagues. Going through the report, it dawned me because one of the audited travels was the Monaco Yacht Show. And that was one that I myself attended, where, like my fellow colleague MP Hartley just mentioned, I took monies out of my own pocket because of how expensive it was. So even staying in the outskirts then of Monaco itself was still much more than this that we received. That is one. But then it increased also transportation to and from back from the show. And let us not even talk about the price of food at the Monaco show. It is extremely expensive. So my question would go more into the direction of what do we get the return on investment on a show like the Monaco show. What could we actually see that going to that show brought to the country? And I think that would be a discussion that you could have with all the yachting companies that were there in that year, and how much new business they brought to the country, translated into the dollars that we actually spend. So to me, it's very important that every show or every travel, that it is properly looked at on return on investment. But most important, if I'm asked to give back per diem when I end up spending less, what happens when I spend more? Can I get that back? And it's not about eating lavish, for example. You're not going to order a lobster, but even something like a pizza, there was literally 45 for a pizza. You're not going to eat pizza 3 days back to back, morning, noon, and for dinner. Then concerning the Parlatino, and maybe, and I'm not too sure, but maybe I have an advantage because I speak Spanish fluently. So I understood everything. Where I lacked, for example, in the last 2 trips, was not being able or not having the assistance here in Parliament to come back, translate what I understood, put it on paper, and put it into motion, where I've had numerous discussions already, for example, with the SG, and he gave me different ideas. And now with the amendment that we brought forth to increase the staff in Parliament, we'll be able to, get a lot more out of Parlatino. And I have not had the opportunity as yet to travel to Para-Americas to be able to make a fair comparison. But I do know, because Parlatino, it is closer to our culture and our ways and thinking, in my opinion, Latin America, the Caribbean, that it is worth a while. But again, an evaluation would need to take place to be able to say, hey, yes, this is something that we want to do, or we want to tweak it in a different manner. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I see the next person up is MP Lewis. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon to my honorable members of Parliament. Good afternoon, Prime Minister and your support staff. Good afternoon, St. Martin. I'm new to Parliament. I was also briefly a minister. And of course, we had a credit card, and you have a credit card policy next to the per diem. But in the situation, I can say when I went on business trips as a minister, I never returned any receipts that I spent the money on, and I replenished the credit card with my own money. Why? Because the policy itself wasn't that clear. You're saying that you get per diem for food and to pay for lodging, to pay for hotel stay. However, if one has a credit card from government and you use it for parking, for example, Holland parking is expensive. And when I came back, I was told, according to that would not be covered, parking does not be covered under the credit card policy. So I'm saying if some of us take our own initiative, we use our own money, call it integrity, or call it your own initiative, what are we going to do, not only within that policy, like my colleague just mentioned, we use our own money, and what is going to happen when you use your own money now when it goes over in excess, surpassing the per diem? Because, of course, I also had that same experience Second of all, I went to Panama for the first time. I see it was very an essential trip to visit, as you understand the different cultures of the different communities. And of course, as representatives of a country, we need to know exactly what works for them. And based on a tourism-based country, what is also going to work for us. So I hope that those things are taken into consideration and that we as a country, of course, moving forward. I can remember at one time, I think MP La Cruz, also we saw like a projection board that was advertising another country. I don't really see that here. I didn't see St. Martin there. So that we can have those type of conversations with those countries, that we also can also market our country, not only in the United States, but also in the Latin Americas, for example, who are also advertising neighboring countries as well within the Caribbean. So I hope a great assessment, better assessment is being done. I can also mention about another trip to the Cayman Islands when I was working in the Ministry of TIAT. We were also proposed, and I see you have the SG there, we were also proposed for the hotels to be paid for, and I was told that we cannot allow it because it's a gift, so that no other entity outside of our government can pay for it, so we have to pay for it. So today now we are trying to save, but we could have been saving a long time, because other countries that invites us, also in a trip to Trinidad, they were willing to pay for the hotel rooms, etc., and we still had to pay for it because our government is saying we cannot accept it. When it was essential to go to that seminar because it was based on cybercrime, and also when you're talking about Panama, it's a one-to-one basis. So their money is $1 to 1. So it's the United States dollar and the dollar, their dollar is the same. So all of those things I think should be taken up into the report. And yeah, let's make proper assessments before we cut our country short. Okay? With that said, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, MP Lewis. Is there any other MP that wish to have the floor? I see MP Jansen-Webster. MP Jansen-Webster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to everyone here and listening online. Good afternoon to our Prime Minister and his support staff. Welcome. Prime Minister, in looking at revising the policy that's there now and turn it into a law, I think that one thing that has bothered me over the years being a civil servant since the year 2000, I've been on many of these business trips. And a lot of time, the perception of the public is that we go and have a great time. But my experience has been that you go and you literally work from morning until late in the night. You work a lot harder when you're on these trips sometimes than when you're on St. Martin. And the $200 that is given for the hotels, for instance, there's a lot of talk about hotels being more expensive, but sometimes you go to some place where the hotels are reasonable, and me being a frugal person myself, I tend to take, if I can get a hotel for $120, I would take a hotel for $120. What happens then is you work from morning till night, you come back to St. Martin, and then a couple months later, because you submit your report, and because you submit your Excel sheet with your financial report and your regular report, you then get a letter from the tax office. You owe X amount because you got this $200 for the hotel. So, and I know that this they do not book the hotel. Let's say that you get the exact amount for the hotel, because sometimes it can change, something can change with the hotel by the time you reach there. And that is why you get the whole $200. But then, if you only spend $120, that $80 a night, the tax office sends you, and it has been my experience on a number of occasions. So then, as one of the other MPs indicated, it's not good, but it's a lot less cumbersome to then book a hotel that costs $199 99 cents, because you do not want that hassle in the end, or I don't like getting an assessment from the tax office. So because of that, then you will then book a hotel for $200, which means the government is not saving that $80. So the whole point is that can be adjusted in your end proposal for the amendment to adjust that so that we use the actual amount that we need. Another point that I had, again, having to do with results. We go there and we see what can be implemented in St. Martin. Reports are made. However, oftentimes you don't see the organization executing it, and maybe that is where an evaluation is needed or a follow-up is needed to see what came out of it, what in the end, because you have the report, but then just a report alone is not enough, because had we implemented a lot of the things that we have seen in the past, I mean, we would have been completely LNG ready now. We would have had so many other things done already based on reports that have been submitted over the years. So I also want to mention, it's probably not popular, but I will say it, to state that we want our leaders to travel economy. I don't necessarily agree with that, because no matter what, we are the leaders of the country, and the way how we are treated when we travel abroad is in complete contrast to the way how we are treated here. We believe, I guess it's a Dutch system, in doe normaal, dan doe je al gek genoeg, which means we're all just normal people. We walk up to our leaders in government over there and in Parliament. We're all normal. Yes, we are, and I am a very normal person. You can always walk up to me. However, the way how we treat our leaders, I think we should be treated a certain way. I've been to, for instance, to Colombia, where I've seen people stand up and salute. We don't need that here in Somalia. The point is just that I do not agree with you putting leaders in economy class. We do not put directors of GBE and directors of the harbor in economy class. So I'm just saying that there is a certain respect that comes with the position, because it's a difficult position. It's a weighty position. It's a weighty position for you all as ministers, because you make decisions for the country all day. And as Parliament, we also make heavy decisions for the country. It's a weighty position. It comes with certain added advantages. And I have traveled as a minister economy class. However, I'm just saying that it shouldn't be you have to travel economy class. And yeah, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Veronica Jansen-Webster. I see MP Lewis would like to have the floor. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Just one statement based on what my fellow MP was just trying to elaborate. I will say this. It's an honorable position. Our positions in this country is honorable. So therefore, we should be treated with respect in this honorable house, in this honorable country. When we go abroad, we should also be treated with that respect. And I have gotten that same type of, as minister when I traveled, we got that type of respect in other countries, and here I do not see it. How can other entities in this country, the individuals that run it, are treated way much better than the individuals that are elected in this country? Every single country that I've visited, and I have visited many countries in my young life, have seen leaders in the country, parliamentarians treated, parliamentarians, senators, congressmen and congresswomen treated with the respect that is due to them. The people have elected us in this house because they respected us for the things that we do in this community. So therefore, we, as leaders in this country also should be treated with the respect by our government and, by extension, the entire population, especially when we leave to represent our country. We should be treated with the uttermost and the highest respect. That is my add-on to what MP Johnson-Webster stated. She's very correct, because I'm telling you, even when I went even through France and they find out that I was a minister, I was treated with respect. I was treated, they didn't even touch me. They didn't touch my bags, anything. So I think here, though, when we're going through, for example, Juliana Airport, as diplomats in this country, we are diplomats. We are dignitaries of our country. They want to be touching us down there. This type of, we have to come with one page, one type of thing, Prime Minister, that all of us who sit in these seats, whether on that side or this side, be treated equally, as we are all leaders in this country. The Parliament of St. Martin, for example, the majority brings people in as appointees. I was also an appointee. I was not elected. I was an appointee, and I was treated with that respect. Today that I'm elected, is like, who are elected officials? So I do totally agree 100% with my colleague, Honorable MP Johnson-Webster. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. I see MP Duran. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One point that I forgot to mention, through you, Mr. Chairman, Prime Minister, you mentioned in your presentation the measurable return on investment when it came to Parlatino in particular. I would like to know, through you, if we can get an overview of the measurable return on investment while attending IPCO, while attending all those kingdom meetings, because here we are, 15 years later almost, still talking about the geschillenregeling. So I would like to know if there's any data on that in terms of action lists from IPCO that can be provided in terms of decisions that were made and actually executed. Because it's one thing to attend something and be repeating the same story for 15 years, we're not being treated fairly, and absolute no results coming out of it, which IPCO is coming up June as well. So I would like to know, since we are, comparing things, or maybe you can, mandate the audit chamber to do a research on that as well, so that we can also have different things to compare in terms of our decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Duran. I now give the floor back to MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to give the Prime Minister a little idea of what it actually means when the difference, and I know that the Prime Minister knows that himself, unless he has been one that has always flown first class, but we have flying to Parlatino, we have flown either one way or economy. But what actually took place was that I got taken out of the line and carried into a room and questioned, because they would never have expected that a member of parliament would be flying economy. So just the way that they view and everyone views you, back to what my fellow colleague mentioned, if we want to get that respect out there, definitely it needs to start from here. And I know that the ministers have a protocol on, and a department that actually takes care of that, and Parliament doesn't, so maybe that is something that we could look into. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I had a point written down, but I was still juggling if this is the appropriate meeting, but still we're talking about travel in general, so I'm still gonna bring it forward. Just to tie into what MP Lewis mentioned in terms of being searched while returning home from business travel, I wanna touch on the being searched while leaving. Private travel, I understand, but there are so much different instances, Prime Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, where Today, it depends on who's working. They tell you take off your shoes, take off your belt, take off everything. Tomorrow is no, you can go ahead. So it's pretty much confusing, and I think that it's high time, and I've been experiencing this now for, I think, 7 years. It's high time for the government then to draft a protocol and that be instituted. I know that there's a difference between the customs once returning, because that falls under the Minister of Justice, but then the airport security while leaving. There seems to be a serious disconnect, and it always matters who is working at the time, and then the person would say, no, that's a minister or that's an MP, yes, but still, yes, but no. So I would like to know from you, Prime Minister, because I've been asking, I haven't seen it, or is there any idea to start a sort of a protocol to have that vastgelegd, so that there's no ifs, no buts? I understand as a minister, sometimes in travel, you drive straight to the plane, so therefore those things are not applicable. But other times, if you go in the hall and have to leave through the regular route, what is established or what is understood where that is concerned? Thank you. And I don't know if that could be answered in this meeting or in writing. Whatever is possible, I would appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Duran. Is there anyone else, any other MP that wish to have the floor? I don't see that's the case at the moment. I would just like to say that, Honorable Prime Minister, I'm happy to see the presentation that was presented today, and I'm happy also to see that some measures are being looked at in order to save some costs, especially when it comes to fast tracking, maybe approval of purchasing tickets, because quite often we see that seems to be somewhat of the issue when we come to save funds. If I buy a ticket today, or if I have to buy it in 2 months from now, the price will go up drastically when you're closer to the travel date. So I'm happy to see certain things. I do agree with some of my fellow MPs as well when they speak about protocol in general. And I think that is something, I think the House of Parliament, and maybe with the Presidium as well, to be looked at to establish a certain protocol when it comes to the honorable members of Parliament. So with that, I would like to ask the Prime Minister how much time you think you would need to be able to answer the members of Parliament.
President, thank you for that question. There are some questions that need some more time. I would like to propose for me to come back, but the problem is next week I'm traveling to the Netherlands, and the week after then we are already in the first week of April. So if it's possible, I can do two things. I will give an answer in writing, or if I have to come personally back, I have no problem with that, then it will be in the first or second week of April. If there is no problem, I would prefer to do it in writing, if it's okay for you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honourable MP. Are there any objections from the members of Parliament with having it in writing? I see no objections, so we will await the answers in writing, Honourable Prime Minister. And with that, I hereby close the meeting. Wait, sorry. I see MP La Cruz would like to have the floor. MP La Cruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard, and we agree in writing, but when in writing? How long would it take? If the Prime Minister could give us an indication, then we will surely be expecting that. Yeah. Thank you.
Honourable Prime Minister, you have the floor.
As I said, I'm leaving next week, so if I can bring in the answers by writing in the second week of April, I'm okay with that, in case you agree with that. Second week of April. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. And with that, I would like to thank the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luc Mercelina, and his support staff for their presence here today and providing the necessary information to the members of this Committee of Parliament. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this committee meeting. Meeting closed.